Welcome to episode 31 of Storm the Norm, the fortnightly podcast where we pick up norms that come in the way of businesses succeeding in a disruptive world. I'm Anisha.
And I'm Narayan.
Storm the Norm is brought to you in association with Grant Thornton Bharat.
Let's get on to today's episode then. Short-sighted. Anisha, that's the word that comes first to my mind when I think about the way global companies have gone about bringing innovation to the massive opportunity that the India market is.
You sound like you want to stir up a hornet's nest, Narayan.
And maybe I do, Anisha. When I reflect upon MNC after MNC and how they've gone about their journeys in India, the three things that strike me immediately are, one, they play it safe. Two, they prioritize testing the waters profitably from day one versus making a long-term commitment with slightly lesser profitability in the early years. And three, they come with a, this is what we have, take it or leave it mindset until India teaches them a lesson otherwise. And that's the reason for today's norm, that innovation at global companies only serves the niche.
What side of the bed did you get out of today, Narayan? You almost sound militant. And I want to hear the evidence of this, though. Having worked with MNCs myself, including one of India's largest automotive manufacturers and one of the largest insurers globally, my experience doesn't completely jive with your position on this.
Okay, let me elaborate on each of those 3 points. Now, back when India was still a two-wheeler market, it took an Indian company, backed by the government no less, to unlock the world's second largest market for cars. Guess who was still testing the waters until recently? The Fords and Toyotas of the world, and one of whom has even exited the market now.
I can't deny that.
The second one, even knowing India's diversity of languages and limited literacy levels, guess who, until recently, was playing it safe and sticking to text-based internet solutions? Google. Right? It took a share chat to unlock Indian language-based opportunities and for these tech titans to follow. And as for the take it or leave it syndrome, I think the most famous example was Kellogg's with its famous, we will only bring Western cereal eating habits to the Indian kitchen strategy for the longest time. Guess who's eating humble masala oats upma right now?
No, I know you make absolute sense, Narayan, but still, I wouldn't want to be an MNC in your crossfires today.
Okay, I don't want to be completely uncharitable or unfair to MNCs. The thing is, when they do create innovation for the masses and not just for the niches, India rewards them like few other markets can. Take the iconic flashlight innovation in the Nokia 1100. It made that model the world's highest selling model, bar none, 250 million phones sold.
And now that I think of it, why hasn't any life insurance company been able to replicate the success of an LIC in India? Despite an utterly low market penetration and an obvious need, every private insurer pales in significance compared to LIC's market share and business size.
Exactly, Anisha. Sorry.
I can say the same for a health insurance company, say, for example, when you look at, the health insurance market, it's Indian company Star Health or even the public sector companies, which actually are far, far, far more dominant as compared to all the other private health insurers out there.
Exactly, Anisha. And I don't think the Indian market is so unfriendly to MNCs or so unprofitable in its promise and opportunity. Why did it take a homegrown company like Paytm to open up the massive opportunity in digital payments when the likes of Visa, MasterCard, and Amex have been around for decades in the country?
Searching questions indeed, Narayan. India has come such a long way from being a destination for low-cost outsourced software and support services to becoming the tech and innovative hub for various global organizations. And some of the world's largest global companies like Microsoft, Uber, Google, Apple, among others, have set up their hubs in India. And many of them are innovating in India for the world.
And yet, despite the presence of these hubs in India, most new offerings coming out of these global conglomerates have evaded new solutions for the real mainstream middle and lower classes of India, remaining focused mainly on their kind of audience. And actually, this is where the true opportunity lies for such organizations to grow exponentially and innovate at scale.
So what's an MNC to do then, Narayan? How can they turn a skeptic like you into a believer about their ability to innovate for the masses and not just for the niches?
As usual, I'm going to take refuge in being the questioner at Storm the Norm. I know you probably have the hacks to storm this thorny norm. But before I ask you, this is probably a great opportunity to introduce our guest expert for this episode. We have today someone who is eminently qualified to take on the challenge of this norm, Gulbahar Torani, MD and CEO of Philips Domestic Appliance for the Indian subcontinent. Gul is a seasoned leader with 20 plus years of experience in building and scaling businesses and has helped Philips grow in one of its toughest and biggest markets for the past 18 years. Gul, welcome to Storm the Norm.
Welcome, Gul. Happy to have you here.
Thank you once again, Gul, for being our guest expert here on this episode of Storm the Norm. We're super excited to have you, and we'll kick this conversation off with just restating the norm for the record and asking you the first straight up question. So the norm is that innovation at global companies only serves the niche. Okay, so what's your take on this? I mean, would you refute it? And if so, how, why?
Thank you, Narayan. And it's a pleasure to be part of this entire chat. And I think the topic that we are discussing today is so close to my heart and exciting because, this is a real-time situation that we face every day. However, I am not going to actually challenge the statement, but what I am going to do is I am going to share with you from my experience the entire process of innovation and leave it to you to decide whether, all the global companies make innovations or products for niche or not. In my experience, what happens is, there is innovation happening in and around us on a day-to-day basis. And I always bucket innovation into two types. One of the innovations that happen is on the existing solutions, products, or processes, which we are very, very aware. We use them or we experience them on a daily basis. And there, the innovation is more to how do we improve the process, improve the experience, improve the product, or improve the solution. The second bucket is the innovation where, companies, marketers, they actually look at some of the latent needs of the consumers and customers, the needs that are not stated, and try to see that how do we provide solutions for those needs. And that's the area of innovation which majority of the organizations, marketers really love to do. In that process, since the need is not stated, it's latent. Sometimes even the consumers doesn't know that this is a need that can fulfill a lot of requirements that they have today, or it's a solution to a lot of pain points that they have today. So it's a latent need. And when organizations are able to identify those needs and provide solutions, it comes across as made for niche. And I would like to substantiate that with an example. See, one of the most classical example of this is smartphones. Because before these smartphones, and you will agree with me, that the idea of having a mobile phone is connectivity on the go. So before mobile phones, if you have to talk to your near dear ones, then you have to be at a particular point, and from there you can talk. With mobile phones, you can actually connect with your family, friends, anywhere you are, because it was mobility on the go. Now, smartphones actually brought a lot more than only talking on the phone. Actually, what it provided is like we as consumers never realized that, we can not only talk through a phone, we can click pictures, we can listen to our favorite music. Nowadays, even you can do banking, you can do everything. So everything is possible over smartphone. If you ask me, before I would say, arrival of smartphone, nobody thought that this is something which is possible and which is required. And that's why when smartphone came into existence, it was perceived to be for the niche. It was perceived to be for a selected few or for a section of the society. And look at the way it has revolutionized the entire, I would say, mankind. Now, At the same time, sometimes what happens is you identify some of the latent needs, you bring a solution which is effective, but it is not very, very effective to the larger set of the population. Case in point is, we see a lot of countries, the norm of washing is like when you use the detergent, you also mix some of the stain removers. And that is absolutely the norm. But in some of the geographies like India, the stain removers never did well, and that's why you believe that it is for certain niche or some section of the society or for particular set of people, while the innovation was being made looking at the need that like detergents do their job, but some of the hard stains you require the stain removers. However, in some of the geographies, the process of stain removing is very, very different. Some people use their hands, or some people rely only on washing machines, and they don't feel the need for stain removers. So we have both type of examples wherein there are solutions which came, which actually revolutionized the way we do a certain process or we experience something and became mass. Some of them couldn't make that much of relevance to the larger section of the society, and that's why remain niche. But if you look at the process for both was same, wherein there was this entire endeavor to figure out latent need or figure out some of the problem areas where if we can provide the solution, it will help consumers live a better life or a better experience or any other solution that they are looking at. So for me, the process remains the same. The outcome sometimes creates the perception.
So, thank you for that. I mean, there's a lot of food for thought right there in your opening statement itself with the examples. I mean, we are focusing not just on innovation and niches, but also about how it happens with global companies serving local markets, if you will, right? And let's talk about the specific case of India. Because Apple claims to make new phones every single year, which are supposed to be dramatically innovative, but it's for the niche. And if you think about home appliances, Dyson creates some amazing innovative appliances, but it's for the niche. It's not for everyone. It's not like all households don't want super efficient, super clean homes, but not everyone can afford a Dyson, right? Or if you take cars, it was a Maruti that created the mass car. It wasn't Ford. It wasn't GM. So it's hard to think about global companies and refute the claim that they don't serve only the niche, or if they do, then it takes a long while before they can actually claim that.
And Gul, before you answer that, I have just linked to that is what makes some of these innovations niche and not mass is also, the global companies are guilty of cost structures in a manner that they are not able to price the products for the masses. And the same examples that Narayan was talking about, whether it is Dyson, the fact that they are not priced for the masses. The same products can be used by the masses, but they're not designed or priced for the masses. So is that also something which is a constraint when it comes to global companies?
First, I think price, of course, is an important barrier to mass or scale adaptation. But I think price also is a function of that. When the technology gets more and more democratized, you get more scales, and when you have more scale, you have better price. That's also something that we need to keep in our mind when we only talk about price, because I will share a completely different example on the same lines. See, what has happened in my experience is a lot of global companies have also realized that it is not only the price bit of it, but you need to be closer to the local consumers and the local consumer insights to bring a lot more relevant products for that local market. And that's I can tell you from my experience, that's a realization with majority of the organizations, that they need to be local, wherein we can leverage the global expertise technology, but we need to combine it with some of the important local consumer insights to make a very locally relevant and mass product or application or solution. And I will give you an example from our industry. which is very, 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 very common. So if you will see globally, there are blenders which are sold as a product. They are meant for blending, mixing, and all those things. But in India, it is the mixer grinder which is being sold, because the application of Indian consumer is very different from the application of of the global consumers. Now, it is not only the price; it is also the application what is more important. And I see majority of the global companies realizing that if we need to cater to masses in India, and if we want to be relevant in India, then we need to develop the expertise and develop mixer grinders and not blenders. I think that realization has been there, and I think all the companies who want to be successful in local markets are, taking that path of being closer to the local consumers and local insights. Now, coming to again on the price bit of it. See, I think there is a cost to the technology, and of course, there are sometimes cost structures which inhibit any of the organization to bring products which are more, I would say, affordable. But if you have the right local insight, and if you have the right capability to convert that local insight into some meaningful innovation, I don't think with the current environment, price becomes a barrier. And I can just share one more example, which is still in the face of a little more niche than mass, is the category of air fryers, which was meant for the global consumers. We realized in India that there is also a consumer in India who wants to consume tasty yet healthy food, and we have tried to bring it. And when we speak to the consumer, it is not the price; it is how do we go to majority of the consumers, how do we convince them that there is a need and this product is fulfilling that need. So sometimes it is also the communication to the consumer, the reach to the consumer, which comes in the way of making some of the technologies reach to masses. So not always, in my opinion, it's not always the price. Sometimes yes, it is the price, but sometimes it is not the right consumer insight, not meant for that particular geography, and sometimes it is your ability to reach to consumers with the right messaging, with the right experience.
So one other dimension seems to be, I mean, you've squarely tackled the question of, if pricing is a constraint. And like you said, it depends on how innovation is approached and the need gap is perceived and identified. But the other thing that seems to be happening is, I don't know if it is about risk mitigation, or if it is about just waiting and watching and then following. But of late, it seems like even when there is a mass innovation opportunity at hand, the MNCs prefer to actually see how things play out initially and then become followers. Case in point is the entire digital payments ecosystem. I mean, a lot of the MobiQuicks of the world burnt their hands before Paytm came and just changed things around. And both Google Pay and Amazon Pay came in much later, even though they had vast amounts of capital available to deploy if they wanted to. But they kind of seemed to wait and watch and then only followed. Likewise, with even going back to the car market, the MNCs waited and watched to see if actually the masses would pick up what Maruti was saying they were picking up, and then became much later followers. Is that a truism that applies across the board, you think?
I think the examples that you shared, seems very relevant. That why a lot of global companies who have the muscle at that point of time didn't actually venture out into some of the segments that you just shared. But I think I don't know the actual reason, because that can be very, very internal. But I don't completely agree with this statement that the global companies are in a wait and watch mood today. I think everyone, and especially for India, has realized that it's a huge potential and be demand for different type of products at different price points. Sometimes it is also the capability that you have in that market, okay, or sometimes it is also the knowledge of the market you have that actually allows you to enter fast or allows you to enter slow. Because as I shared with you, there are a lot of examples where you will see that the MNCs have taken the first mover advantage, and they have come with certain new technologies, and then actually captured the market even before the local players, are even willing or ready to invest in that. Because if you look at before any of the local competitors, and we had quite a bit of manufacturing at that point of time into electronics and not into phones, but there were global competitors, there were global players who came to India, who actually reached out to the masses and took over the market with a storm, without waiting for India to change and the consumers to show, I would say, receptibility to phones which were at that point of time much more costlier than the feature phones that we were using.
Good. A related question that keeps coming to my mind is that some of the global companies, actually do not even start with this whole premise that there is a segment. India's got this big pyramid of middle class, lower middle class, upper middle class. But there are companies like, say, for example, when you take Boat, the company that's come with the AirPods, at 10% of the cost of what Apple AirPods are today. This is one company actually that has proven that technology can be applied to masses. The product need is there. Okay, and how is it that one company is able to afford it? Because their starting point was that they do want to create a product for the masses. And when you start with that premise, you look at the need for masses. You also look at what's the sweet spot pricing. And then you work backwards to create an innovation around it. Even if it's not an innovation, it's me too. But their whole premise was, how do we keep taking costs out of these expensive products to make it affordable? I mean, they might be fast followers. It might not be a new product innovation, but in my mind, they've innovated with price. They've innovated with the whole distribution model. So the mindset of saying that this is the segment that we want to price for, and therefore there is a large enough opportunity, is something that global companies still, I think, lag a lot.
See, Anisha, very, I think, phenomenal example. And I would like to just add one thing to it. Maybe sometimes it is also the way or the philosophy of where you want to position yourself. How do you perceive quality? Okay, is also something driving such decisions. See, because what happens is we see quality from a consumer standpoint. Okay, as I so for example, let's take this example of AirPods, right? Maybe the way, and I'm just saying it from how do I perceive as a consumer the quality bit of it, right? For a lot of consumers, the quality could be that I should be able to hear or speak properly on a call, or while I'm watching a movie or anything that I'm doing through that AirPods, right? While for some other consumer or for a brand, there could be the use of the material, a lot more technical into it. So it's also the brand philosophy, I would say, that maybe is also restricting a lot of brands not to go that route. And I would just say it can be both ways. Sometimes just companies don't even think that this is the segment that, or this is the mass market, or sometimes it is also their philosophy of the quality which restrict them from doing that route.
No, that's a fair point. I mean, there are people who don't want to come beyond certain aesthetics or design or quality standards, and therefore are willing to not compromise on the price at all.
Yes.
And as Steve Jobs is reputed to have said once, sometimes people don't know what they want until you give it to them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, those are fantastic points. I wish we could keep going on with this conversation, but there's already so much you've unearthed here, Gul. Absolutely a pleasure chatting with you on this topic.
No, thank you, Anisha. Thank you, Narayan. And I think I enjoyed the session, and it was quite a bit of challenge. So thank you for challenging and also giving a lot of perspective. Thank you.
So, Narayan, what did you take away from everything that Gul had to say?
I have to say, Gul's wisdom, as much as his knowledge and experience, shone through in his insightful take on the norm. He didn't so much take on the norm with bravado as skillfully navigate through the stormy waters to show us how innovation can take MNCs to new horizons. But he also showed that to do so requires changing perspectives dramatically, and how one looks at innovation as a process and not just an output or outcome, and how one goes about recognizing and catering to this opportunity. I have to say that as much as I might have sounded belligerent in the beginning, Gul had a way of disarming me with his perspective. Perhaps with leaders like him at the helm, MNCs could very well deliver innovation for the masses and not just for the niches. What about you, Anisha? How would you storm this norm, and what hacks do you have for our audience?
Winning in India actually requires a long-term vision, a very customized market approach, and a sharp focus on the country's mass market early adopters who would become users of the standard global offerings. A keen eye at that segment, looking at that segment, is what is a good starting point. Recognizing that there are many Indias within Indias that are collectively more diverse and unique than an entire continent. The opportunities for global and Indian businesses are endless. And with that in mind, here are my 5 hacks.
I'm all yours.
The first one goes something like this. Convert innovation to a production process rather than a creative process restricted to a few lone geniuses. It's important to realize that the best innovators aren't individuals or a couple of geeks and geniuses in an organization, but employees at the forefront of business processes. These are the people with real insights and real customer interactions.
So true.
Companies should remember that non-traditional sources of knowledge also have the potential to spark process innovation and help overcome very difficult problems. And the trick is to encourage these folks within a large company to share best practices and success stories with one another. There are many companies that already do this informally, I think, but there is a need to formalize this with a very systematic effort to lay the groundwork for open source information sharing. Also, in addition to this, it's important to establish routines for gathering ideas from external sources and putting them to use.
Yeah.
It helps to reach beyond a company's internal networks for inspiration. And these are companies actually who do this exceptionally well. They spot ideas through various sources and have learned to take an idea that's obvious in one context and might not sound so innovative and apply it in the not so obvious ways to a very different context. What comes to my mind is this case study of Fiamma Devil soap. And they got their inspiration for technology from a very lateral category, which was very for that category. It was such an obvious thing. There was nothing innovative about it. Let me build upon it a little more. They wanted the soap to solidify in a transparent format, which is what is today become such a successful brand. And all their efforts were, failed almost for many, many years, because either there was moisture or there was a lot of wear and tear of the soap, and it wasn't able to stay dry on solidification. And where the inspiration came from, lateral inspiration, from this those orange candies, those hard-boiled round candies that we used to eat as kids. Their inspiration actually came from saying that if they are able to solidify a liquid and solidify it so tight, how is it that, is there an opportunity sitting for us in looking at what they do? And that's the technology that they got their inspiration from.
Another often quoted source of external inspiration for so many companies, especially in the realm of supply chain, are the famous Dabbawalas of Bombay. You're so right. Yeah.
Yeah. And some of the best companies have learned to systemize this process. It's not one-off random brainwave, I mean, sometimes it is serendipity. But how do you actually make a process out of it? They've created an environment that fosters creativity and problem solving in a team.
In short, recognize that looking within your company alone for innovation is the classical definition of thinking inside the box, especially when you keep looking for innovation from the outliers only, rather than seeking and seeing it across the board.
Exactly, Narayan. So moving on to my second hack, design for affordability and take costs out of production.
Intriguing.
To innovate for the masses, the first mindset that organizations need to embrace is that of elimination. By nature, human beings love to add to things. Just think about all the objects and knickknacks that get added to our homes.
I was going to say we're all hoarders, but I love the Hindi word for this. Hum sab habshi hai.
Sahi bola. We can't help but add to things to improve things. But a very counterintuitive, innovative approach is to subtract or leave out a key component or the step in the process in order to innovate. And some of the biggest commercial gains are possible when companies actually employ the elimination technique. You have to look at your wireframes and your journeys and your entire value chain to see if there is a possibility of removing something and asking yourself what would happen if we had to remove a component or a part or a step in the process. Some also call this, it's a very simple word, the KISS method, keep it simple, in order to meet requirements most effectively. Teams do need to assess their design for any opportunity to combine functions and thus reduce the final number of steps and parts or processes required for the assembly. And this way you can systematically eliminate not just parts, but significant costs to make innovations affordable for the masses.
Perhaps Michelangelo put it most succinctly when asked how he created such a perfect sculpture in David. He said, I took away the parts that were not needed.
So well put, Narayan. This is timeless wisdom. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Let's move to the third hack.
All right.
Make the affordable aspirational. And I simply love this one, because it comes from a very basic human insight. How do you make affordable innovation also aspirational for mass adoption? Somehow the frugal innovation approach typically rejects the use of aspirational factors such as lifestyle narratives or appealing designs, either because doing so increases the final price of the product, or you are a global company and you have certain standards to maintain. And I think Gul also touched upon it in his conversation. Or because you assume that these factors are not important enough for the masses. And let's take the example of the famous example, and now I think overanalyzed Tata Nano, the most affordable, innovative car, that was to hit the Indian market. And the HBR postmortem analysis, really, I think, succinctly put it, that Nano failed to sell as well as they had hoped for because their creators did not fully appreciate the aspirations of low-income consumers. Even though it was the most affordable car innovation, low-income consumers still preferred to pay a premium for alternative brands and even saw used car as a better option.
Wow.
And they said that Nano failed because their low-income targets did not wish to purchase a car, which reinforced the perception that they could not afford it. Imagine for a Nano user, I mean, they are upgrading from a two-wheeler to a four-wheeler because they want to make that statement that they have moved forward in life, and they've actually, cut across to the next level. And here is a car that's in fact reinforcing the fact that, you bought a car.
Where they are.
You bought a car, but guess what? You are where you are. You haven't moved up.
Yeah.
So innovators have to be more realistic and empathetic towards the desires of the mass market and realize that their decisions are not purely driven by cost considerations. There are social and emotional needs that need to be taken into account.
Indeed, Anisha. In my work with Maruti some years back, we found this telling shift from years of consumers asking, "Kitna deti hai?" or "How much does it give?" to "Aur kya deti hai?" or "What else does it give?" Right? Because their aspirations meant they wanted more than just fuel efficiency. That's why you'll find things like airbags and Bluetooth connectivity, even in the lowest segment cars now. Because we humans at every socioeconomic level are driven not just by needs, but by wants.
And desires drive everything. So true, Narayan.
Yep. So what's next?
So let's move to my fourth hack. Assess which functions can be accomplished by outsourcing, outbuying, APIs, etc., etc. Making innovations affordable for the masses may require using capability that is located somewhere else in the country or in another country altogether. And this is especially true if the product is going to be distributed or sold elsewhere, to cut down on transportation and shipping costs, which must also be factored into the price per unit. Remember, unit economics is such a critical factor of a successful innovation.
Indeed.
Innovation for mainstream also necessitates a careful calibration of the build versus buy equation very early upfront. And remember the opportunity cost?
Yep.
So once again, it's vital to weigh the opportunity cost of reinventing the wheel. A custom build should be judged by its cost compared to an off-the-shelf option and by its value relative to the other projects and activities that your employees could undertake instead of just reinventing the same thing again.
This is such an important point, Anisha, because innovation is normally looked at only from a product or production lens, but every aspect of an organization's value chain is ripe for innovation.
And in fact, there's one data point that says that more than 95% of innovations are incremental innovations, or innovations that actually are just sustaining a product in the market. And if that is the case, then looking at every aspect of the organization's value chain and saying, which part is ripe for a little bit of a change or an upgrade or a transformation is so crucial.
Absolutely.
And that brings me to my last hack for this norm.
Okay.
Have a clear process for gauging and evaluating the product market fit. There is no clear definition of what product market fit really is. That is why 9 out of 10 startups fail in the market. At an idea stage, they seem like you have a perfect market and a perfect offering, but obviously the market tells you otherwise.
Yeah.
I think many times this is not because it's a very esoteric or a mystical or an elusive concept, but because there's so many variables at play here. The type of business, is it a B2B or a B2C? How competitive is the market? How crowded is the market? What's the price point? But I think broadly, if you were to summarize and keep it very simple, it boils down to revenue, engagement, and scale. There are various tests to validate this. Does your offering have the ability to shift spends, or is it creating new spends for customers? We've spoken about it in one of our earlier norms as well.
Yeah.
See, it's very difficult to increase the wallet size of the customer. So if you have an offering that has the potential to shift the spends where you're replacing a product or an offering, or even upgrading, because incremental is okay, that's a far easier task than creating an offering where it is an additional burden on a customer's wallet.
Yep.
Another very interesting way of evaluating it is whether, just hard-nosed asking yourself this question, that today, if we were to stop existing, what percentage of the customers would feel disappointed? If you think that 30 to 40% of the customers are going to miss you because you're not in the market, then you know that you have a decent product market fit. Although this is not an ultimate rule, but this kind of a thought process clearly helps gauge the value that the product has in the eyes of the customer.
Couldn't agree more.
How engaged is your customer with your offering beyond the pain it's solving is another very useful metric. You might, the first metric is, of course, revenue, like we said. And then that's conversion, and that's obviously purchase. But I think a much better factor is your customer engaged with you, even if they are not buying? Are they staying engaged with you? Do you see them having some kind of a conversation going in some form with your product or offering?
Clear but tough questions to ask, but the answers can give you multiple winning strategies for innovation to be deployed at scale. So fantastic. And thank you for those 5 actionable hacks in one place, Anisha.
Thank you, Narayan.
A thought-provoking norm, seasoned experts with thought-provoking insights, and some great hacks to storm the norm. This is a good place to wrap up episode 31 of Storm the Norm.
As always, there are multiple places you can catch us on: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Hubhopper, JioSaavn, by just searching for Storm the Norm, and on Saregamapa Caravan 2.0 devices on channel 453.
This is Brian
and Anisha,
signing off for now. We'll be back with a new episode shortly. Thank you and talk to you soon.
Thank you.